Welcome in, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of Sportsify. I'm Grant. We got Jamison here. He is repping
Yes,
his
sir.
gear. He's feeling
Yes,
good,
sir.
feeling his team, and he should. Rams played a heck of a game just last night for us. Matt, not sure if Matt is going to be joining us. We sent him the stuff. We've been waiting, so we'll see if he joins, and if so, we will gladly accept him. Same with Mike. But we're just going to get started with you guys because we've been gone for, it's been 3 weeks. It's been a while.
It's been a
Christmas.
while.
Christmas, New Year's, all that good stuff.
Hmm.
Also, most of the playoffs was already kind of set, for the most part. The teams that were in when we were last on, I'm pretty sure all stayed. But we had a pretty good week. I shall be honest, this week was not that great for the wild card round. What do you think? What do you think?
No, I mean, I maybe it's time to start a dialogue about that seventh wild card team not being necessary.
Yeah.
Because you look at some of these games, and I think with the exception of the Packers beating the Cowboys last year, like those teams usually get run off the field pretty quickly.
Yeah. I mean, the
Um,
Broncos did. Like, it wasn't even close.
Yeah, I mean, I was sweating it for a second because I was like, oh, I think the Bills are going to win. And then, I mean, I would have been happy if the Broncos won and they throw that
Sure.
bomb to start the game. I'm like, oh, okay. Like,
Or
if you're a Broncos fan, you might be, or if you're a Bills fan, you might be maybe a little nervous. Like, is this
Broncos may be coming to play. Yeah.
coming to like a quick collapse? Like, you have this big build. Like, is this the MVP season? Is this the year we're going to do it? Look at our
Right.
offensive line. Josh Allen's playing out of his mind. And then, uh-oh, the Broncos are here. This is a rookie quarterback on the road. I think they were
And that was all
eight
they
and a
did.
half point underdogs. Yeah, and then that was the only thing that they did. And then 31 unanswered points by the Bills, and not too many of those other games were much better. So,
Yeah.
and even the ones that we thought were good, I think really the exception was Commanders and
Hmm.
Bucks
Yeah. That
was
was
the
the only.
one.
Yeah. Like it was the
Yeah,
only one that had injury coming down to it. Like all the other ones, games were over. By the start of the fourth quarter, maybe halfway through the
yeah. I
the
mean,
third.
looking at it here, it was the only single digit game.
Yep.
And as we'll kind of get into talking, some of those games were absolute meltdowns by certain teams and players. So it
Yeah.
was not a great weekend of football. I will say, obviously, a great weekend of football for me. Monday
Yep.
night primetime,
Yeah.
a quote unquote home game in Arizona because of the tragedies happened down there in
Yeah.
Southern California.
Is that
So
actually? I'm kind of unaware in the area where the fire's happening. Is that actually like right by SoFi, like
yeah, they
Inglewood?
had they had to. I don't think it's going to actually get to a point where it is now causing damage to SoFi at all, but it was enough to where
Yeah.
some facilities were affected,
And all the
and
fans coming in.
obviously, yeah, like for the sake of travel, like it just was not realistic. So to move it over, I think they're about 6 hours away to Gilbert. Played a home playoff game
Yeah.
in in
In Arizona.
Arizona, and apparently it was the last they had checked pregame, it was about 51% Vikings fans.
Yeah.
So effectively, we win a division. And we still have a road game, literally, because we're not at home, and
Right.
also because we don't have home field advantage from a fan standpoint. But
Yeah.
obviously, able to pull that one out, and
Yeah,
wasn't
I mean it was
really.
it was weird seeing like the Rams logos on the field and seeing like red seats.
I
Like it
know,
kept
I
throwing me
know.
off
And
watching
I
it.
mean, I will say, like, shout out to the Cardinals bros. I
Oh
don't
yeah.
think I don't think any of us in the division, obviously we hate each other's teams, Niners, Seahawks,
Yeah.
Rams, but nobody really hates the Cardinals. They just
They
are.
haven't done anything. Like they
They're
really are like the guy that just kind of hangs around like in the friend group that you're kind of friendly with, but you don't
Yeah,
really, you know
it's
what I mean?
it's just like, he's a friend of a friend. He's all right. But shout out to them for doing what they did,
Oh yeah.
hosting
I'm
us there and making that happen. Because again, like with the NFL, they're like it's an unforeseen thing, and there's not really a way, especially this time of year, to delay things any further. Especially as we started
Yeah.
getting into the divisional round week. So
Hmm.
I'm glad that they were able to make that happen despite everything going on there. I would have thought maybe that would add to some of the drama to this game.
Mix
But
things
it
up a little bit. Yeah.
but
Well, I
it's
mean, we might as well just get there with this game. Like I'll just say it. And I put it here in the doc. Like outside of Andy Reid, Sean McVay's the best coach in the league. Like,
yeah, I've been
like,
seeing a lot of that floating around.
like I would probably even could have been convinced about that even before this game. Um, but like if you look at like overall talent, the Vikings I think had more talent,
Hmm.
like across the board. And like Brian Flores has been awesome. He's going to be a head coach here soon. I imagine he's going to start taking interviews here. We're going to start seeing that news come up. But like, dude, like this win was all coaching, and this Rams defense has really come alive. Like I don't even know who your defensive coordinator is.
It is first year for Chris Shula, grandson of
Well, there
Don
you go.
Shula.
Wow. Well, it just runs in the family.
And
Football's in their genes.
exactly. And it was funny as we were kind of getting prepped here. I was scrolling through and I happened to see this headline, something I hadn't seen before. Um, maybe even stat of the week here. The Rams are
Bring it.
spending 39.5 million on their defense this season, which is by far the cheapest defense in the league. The
Yeah.
next closest is the Panthers at 66.7 million.
Usually,
So
if you're in the air hanging around with the Panthers in terms of anything, it's usually not good.
yeah, and
Um,
we're paying almost half of what Carolina is paying for their defense,
yeah.
and our defense has, we didn't really get to kind of tap into the last few weeks of the regular season, but really for the Rams, the defense was after that Bills game. We only allowed 33 points over the last like 3 or 4 weeks
Well,
of the
and
regular season.
your guys' GM like hitting on defensive players, like just absolutely
Jared
dynamite.
Verse and Braden Fisk are absolutely
And well,
massive.
and then last year it
Kobe
was
Turner.
yep, Turner.
Um,
Like, dude, I'll be honest, like them dumping Ernest Jones, Aaron Donald going, like you lost like huge pieces in the middle.
yeah.
Which still shout out by the way for Ernest Jones, but like still, I thought that was them, done deal for them, like on their defense. Like I was like, yeah, I mean, you can't
Well,
when you lose the greatest defensive player of the last 15, 10 years,
yeah.
like, and you lose, a really great, inside linebacker. I'm like, yeah, you're not going to replicate that, but like, dude, they've hit on all their defensive picks, and it's showing.
And and really like the crazy part is, I've obviously watched every game this season and one of the bigger frustrations aside from just like injury luck that really kind of soiled that front half of the season, we're sitting
Yeah,
there 1-4. But
running
our
out third
defense,
stringer linemen.
yeah, our defense was just tragic. Like our, sometimes we can patch together an offense, and that's kind of what was able to get us at least somewhat on track in the middle of the season. But that it was like we were playing turnstile defense. We couldn't tackle. We were getting pressures. Like Jared Verse and Braden Fisk were like leading all of these things and
Mhm.
pressures and rookie pressures, and but couldn't actually get home. Couldn't do anything with. We had, I don't remember the number of sacks our team had, but it was very low by comparison to a lot of other teams.
Yeah,
And then, slowly throughout the course of the year, defense is getting a little bit more stout. Sure, you could say that the quality of opponent in the last few weeks wasn't quite there, but
yeah,
to go in and play a Vikings team who I think depending on your stance on Sam Darnold going to that game, I was kind of more in the, hey, this is still Sam Darnold. Like I'm not gonna sweat it too hard. I thought we
sure.
legitimately had a chance because if I look at coach and quarterback matchup, I think the Rams clearly had that one in the bag. But I was
Hmm.
still like, this defense, they're kind of coming on. I don't know if that's going to be enough for guys like Justin Jefferson, for example, who didn't really have much going on for him last night.
Hmm.
But that defense kind of slowly started to turn things up. And the funniest part about that 39.5 million that we're paying for our entire defense is that Denver paid Russ 38.5 million to play for Pittsburgh this year.
Yeah, dude.
So that's what we're working with on defense with a first year defensive coordinator. And we tied a playoff record with 9 sacks. And
Yep.
the 82 yards lost on those 9 sacks is a record.
Yeah.
So, and
Well,
we were
feet,
able to
and it just
generate
it
that a
just
lot
it's crazy
without
because like
blitzing.
the Vikings line is good. They've been good all season. Like they've been at one of their strong suits. They've been able to keep Darnold up, and
Hmm.
it's one of those things, man. Like any given Sunday, like I guess it was Monday, but like, dude, it literally doesn't matter. Like
Hmm.
you know, especially come playoffs, like it doesn't matter what you did in the the regular season.
Hmm.
How many times have we seen this before? Where a team that's been one of the best teams, you know, in the regular season, first time in the playoffs, they crumble, right? Or they
Hmm.
don't show up. And it's these frisky teams like, who maybe, kind of claw their way in, which the Rams kind of did there. It came down to, weeks 17, technically, because 18 weeks now, for
Hmm.
them to secure that spot. And like, yeah, they got it done. I think most teams in the NFC, honestly, I think they were really hoping the Vikings would win. Like, maybe just because like, dude, if McVay gets hot if Stafford gets hot with Nakua and Kyron Williams and this defense is showing up, like
Yeah,
you
I
just have to
and
play your
I
best football for like 4 weeks
and I
and you
don't
can make it
know if
achievable.
this is another stat that's been floating around out there. I don't know if you've seen this, but since Stafford has joined the Rams in the months of December, January, February, he's 18-3 with
Mm,
McVay. So like when it's really time, they're they're winning games and it's not always going to be pretty. I mean, again, looking
sure.
at our last few games of the season, we're beating the Cardinals 13-9 in a game that I had to sweat out when I was on vacation on the East Coast, staying up late to
Right.
watch that on my phone. I'm like, are we serious? Like I need to win this game against the Cardinals to not have to worry about a Week 18 matchup against the Seahawks.
Hmm.
We're beating the Niners 12-6. We're beating the Jets 19-9, and that's after we have that 44-point explosion against the Bills. But again, allowing 9 points, 6 points, 9 points in those 3 weeks before
Hmm.
we're resting all of our players in Week 18. I was like, this is a pretty good indicator for our defense. If you look at a lot of the stats, it's still not going to be very favorable for them.
Hmm.
But if you're watching the games, there was definitely a difference there. And the last thing on the Rams defense for me in this game was, yeah, Sam Darnold got sacked 9 times. And sure, some of those may have been issues with the offensive line, but we weren't sending a lot of pressure. We were winning with 4 guys up front, but Sam was still having like 2.5, 3 seconds on average to throw the
Yeah,
ball. And one of that is obviously on him. It's his decision making. You got to get rid of the ball.
sure.
Some of that is on play calling. You have to run something a little bit quicker to help your guy out. But I think it also is a testament to, with the plays that they are trying to run for the Minnesota Vikings, they weren't getting open enough when they needed to. And our defensive secondary hasn't been great, but to more or less, lock up Addison and Jefferson in a playoff game is pretty big,
Yeah,
especially going into this next week where we're going to have another really good receiving duo. Maybe not as great of a quarterback passing the ball right now in Jalen Hurts, but it gives me some pretty good vibes defensively going into that. And to know that if offense isn't clicking on all cylinders, we're not going to be totally cooked because in the past that's what it would have been. If the offense isn't scoring 40 points, then we had no shot. It's
yeah.
like a complete flip. Even though we end up putting up 27 points in this game, only 20 of those points actually came from offense because of a scoop and score, which also helped. But
I
yeah,
will say, I will
very
say
proud of the defense.
that Stafford pass, that was pretty. That was really weak.
I
Like
don't I don't make the rules,
I know you don't. I know you don't. I'm not blaming you, but I'm saying like
and
that's considered a pass.
he
Like, come
did
on,
he did a little flick.
still
That's
weak.
all.
It's
That's
still
all I'm gonna
weak.
say.
Still weak.
There were some very terrible calls on both sides that whole game
Yeah.
that I was very confused with. And honestly, I was watching this game with when my buddies here came over, and we were watching this game, and I was like, man, our offense is clicking. We have some stupid penalties that are giving us like a 2nd and 31
Yeah.
where we're going from a first down to multiple holding penalties or a missed call or a weird holding on us that they take a look at, and Joe and Buck are like, I don't see anything there, and then they bring in the rules analyst. He's like, yeah, I'm not sure what that is, and then
Yeah.
meanwhile we're going back. So I feel like we could have poured it on even a little bit more, but call it how you want to. Maybe we got away with one there, but
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
it
Well, you know,
as the rule stands,
the rule
he
stands. Rule
he he
stands. You
flicked
guys
he
won.
flicked it forward.
Even if
Um,
you guys got that touchdown, they got the touchdown. Score still, it wouldn't have affected the score. It wasn't. They won handedly. I am interested though. Like there was an opportunity here where Sam Darnold could have played himself into making some like big money here.
he played
But
himself out of that money
yeah,
specifically.
the last 2 weeks
Yeah.
against like in his two biggest games of his career, biggest games of the season, could have had the 1 seed, could have had a bye, could have had the division, but then doesn't because he doesn't have that great of a game, and then has a really bad game, like season on the line, obviously it's win or go home and doesn't
hmm
show up. Um, I wonder what the Vikings do. I mean, I'm leaning towards some of the comments that Kevin McConnell has made. It really seems like some like finality in his comments, saying like the stuff, it's a season I'll cherish with Sam for, a long time. I'm like, you don't really, I don't know, you don't really say that if this isn't
Yeah.
coming to an end. Um, and so I really feel like he's in the same boat that he was coming into this year, kind of once JJ McCarthy got hurt, got paid, $10 million. Obviously had the best, had an MVP like season, 35 touchdowns, over 4,000 yards. Like really, really great stats. But I feel like he's in the same boat. I feel like he's gonna have to do another prove deal because in the NFL, it's all about, what have you shown me lately? And like like
Hmm.
coaches will lose their jobs off the final few weeks of a season, right? In the NFL,
Yep.
it really is like, like when you've got to have it, do you have it? And he didn't against the Lions. Like he didn't win against the Lions at all. Um, and didn't show up in the some of those games against some of these like higher tiered opponents. And so I imagine he's probably gonna get not gonna get re-signed with the Vikings. They're gonna stick with JJ McCarthy.
Hmm.
Um, I just wonder where he's gonna go. Would a Jets reunion happen? Like
I feel
would
like the vibes are too sour,
I feel like
and
he may not want to go back there.
yeah, which I wouldn't blame him, and I also wouldn't blame chart like Jets fans for not
Yeah, he
wanting him to
played
come
terrible
back
when he was there.
either,
He did play terrible when
because
he was there.
again, like the one thing with me we talked about during the season, the Vikings, it was a really good run. Unfortunately, the Vikings are also just incredibly cursed when it comes to that
Yeah.
sort of stuff. Like having, it's one thing to be cursed in just perpetual losing and like the Browns, for example.
Right.
It's another to be like, a 14 win wild card team that loses in the first round of the playoffs.
Yeah.
And the only teams you lose to all season are the Lions and the Rams, funnily enough.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, there was still, he was making some throws. It was nice. I was pretty big on the Kevin O'Connell, coach of the year, because I was like, this is a guy who's putting together, a quote unquote MVP case for a
Yeah.
guy who was basically seeing ghosts, and was
Yeah.
shipped off, and
Yeah.
nobody ever wanted to see him play. And he's obviously got some talent, but I think he's one of those guys where you have to have the perfect situation, and when you can
Hmm.
really key in on him, he's not, he's going to crumble. And unfortunately for him, he's seeing ghosts again. And so the whole time I was like, one of the reasons I feel good about this playoff game is, obviously what's going on the Ram side of the ball, but at the end of the day, this is still Sam Darnold in a win or go home game in the postseason,
Yeah.
and it's
His
on
first
the
time.
road. Technically, it's his first action there, and when it gets down to it, like it's the real deal quarterbacks that
Hmm.
kind of set you apart in this league. And you can
Oh
be
yeah.
an incredible coach, but if you have a quarterback that's not quite it, then I mean, we see it with Tomlin. Like, I don't think we are saying Tomlin's a bad coach, but at some point, like the clock is ticking, and like
Hmm.
there's not been any postseason success in a long time because you
Yeah.
are employing these bums at quarterback.
Yeah,
And
like it's the tail end of Ben's career, and he was terrible. And then
exactly,
it's Kenny Pickett, then it's Justin Fields, and the shadow of Russell Wilson. You know,
exactly. And
um,
and so I think Sam is probably
I do think
um
that might be an option where he goes, though. I'll be real.
Pittsburgh.
Yeah, like
Pittsburgh.
because again, I think he's probably in the same boat he was again. He's gonna have to prove it again.
Hmm.
Which is again still in the NFL is still kind of crazy when you like the dude threw 4,000 yards, 35 touchdowns, team won 14 games, and he's still in like it's just that's just what it takes in the NFL. Like you
Yeah.
got to have it or you don't. It's a have or have not league.
I I personally think he's probably going to be finding himself in like a high profile backup situation.
You don't
Um,
think he might be a starter?
well, here's the thing, and I and
Like
I've heard
I think the Steelers, if they got that production from a quarterback, those stats, like just take it
but
as the stats.
I also don't know if they have the offensive play calling there
Yeah.
with Arthur to like do that with
Hmm.
him.
No, I agree.
Um,
And also, no one is Justin Jefferson. They don't have like George Pickens is good, but he's not Justin Jefferson.
exactly, and
Aaron Jones was great this year. Jordan
he
Addison,
he's a guy that I think needs to be piloted by like a really good offensive mind, whether it's an offensive coordinator or head coach.
the
And
Rams.
so,
Stafford's
well,
getting old.
I was gonna say, ironically, like if he's gonna be a backup in like San Francisco or McVay or one of the Shanahan McVay tree guys,
Yeah.
that's gonna be one thing. But I think the teams that are bad that are looking for quarterbacks are not going to have that same luxury where you have the good play calling and the good coaching and you don't have the quarterback.
Yeah.
Because if you look at the teams that don't have quarterbacks, we're talking like teams like the Raiders, for example. It's like if you put him on
Giants.
the Raiders or you put him on the Giants, like they don't have the McVay, the Kevin O'Connell, the Shanahan brains to
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I don't think Miami would be a bad option.
Mm-mm.
But again, you're looking at Tua there and saying, okay, Tua's kind of limited in his own way. Sam is kind of limited in his own way. So I don't think
It's
he's
interesting. Their
gonna
weaknesses and
start.
strengths
But
kind of are mirror each other. Where
yeah,
like Tua is not the super athletic guy that has a big arm, but he's cerebral and smart. And where
yeah,
Sam Darnold is makes a lot of really dumb decisions. But I mean, you put his arm against anybody,
yeah,
like, and is
yeah.
super athletic. So that could be an interesting spot for sure.
Yeah, so it's a weird place to be for him, but I think unfortunately, like if he wasn't staying in Minnesota, he's probably looking at like I said, a high profile backup guy.
Yeah.
Unless for some reason, we get surprised or
Another
sometimes not
injury,
so
like kind of
that
like in this situation again.
or just bad decision making by an organization. Like I say that it would be surprising for one of these teams without a quarterback to take him, but at the end of the day, like it wouldn't really be because teams do dumb stuff all the time, and we're just like, how did you not see that?
Yeah.
But somebody's going to see something in Sam Darnold. Unfortunately, he puts a lot of good things on tape. You
Hmm.
play bad in the biggest moments, and it's
That
a
should
double
matter.
whammy. It's a double whammy. It's again win or go home, but it's also playing for like money. I feel like every time he's getting sacked or he's seeing these ghosts and making a bad throw, he's fumbling the ball, he's throwing an interception, he's just like seeing money fall out of his pocket.
Yep.
And I think that that's something that can get exposed very easily by a good defensive coordinator. And so I think it's going to be hard for a coach who's legitimately trying to win or is in a position where their team is a quarterback away to
Yeah.
bring a guy like him in if he's going to be starting. So
Yeah, I think
unfortunate for him.
I would disagree. I do think he's going to find himself a starting job because um the quarterback incoming class, it's Sanders and Ward and that's it. And there are still teams who desperately would view him as an upgrade and maybe like a desperate organization. I mean, honestly, essentially, I don't think they're going to pay him the money that Kirk Cousins got, but I see like a Kirk Cousins type of situation where a team feels like they've got something, feel like they're close. They need the quarterback, and I think he may find himself starting. And so
Maybe like Baker Mayfield money if they're
yeah,
gonna do it.
I mean, I think that's definitely what I wouldn't hate that if I guess it depends on the organization, right? But like I could see him making $30 million. I think Baker's making like 33. Something along those lines.
I could see him playing in Tennessee, but Tennessee also has the first overall pick, so it's like,
And they may want to just hold that captive, get a ransom for that, and be happy
mhm.
with a Sam Darnold, and get a load up on picks because that team has no talent. Like they've
That
got,
team was bad.
they need a quarterback is not going to fix that. Like
Yeah,
that quarterback's going to go over there and die for the first like 3 years before they do anything.
yeah.
But speaking of the Vikings and they being a cursed franchise, the other most cursed franchise is the other team that shares a stadium with your team, and that would and that would be the Los Angeles Chargers. Chargers do what the
Oh
Chargers
boy.
do. Harbaugh is probably gonna is good chance for Coach of the Year, based on what they did in the regular season. Taking this team from a joke of a franchise. I mean, not joke of a team. I won't say franchise. They're still have a joke of a franchise because they have two of some of the most embarrassing playoff losses of the last couple of years. Um, Chargers charger it up, get blown out by the Texans, 32-12. Justin Herbert with 4 picks. The dude had three all season. Um, Yikes. As someone who earlier on this broadcast said that I would pay Justin Herbert money like a Mahomes or a Lamar Jackson, a Josh Allen. I've officially recanted my statement. I was wrong. I think the dude is talented, but like, dude, that 4 picks against a Texans team that's not very good. Like, they're not. They have taken a step back this year. And Justin Herbert, at least two of those picks. I wasn't able to actually watch this game, but I watched two of the four picks were some of the worst picks I've ever seen him throw. He did across the body, like across the field throw into double coverage, like a
That
joke of a
throw,
throw. Is
that
so
throw
terrible.
was a rollout to the right,
Yep.
throw back to the deep left of the field, and I'll say this. Obviously, I think we all still, um, you know, we still think that he's a good
Yeah,
quarterback.
I do.
Um, I do think that there is something to say about. Um, I thought the Chargers would squeak into the playoffs this year.
Hmm.
Um,
I think most
I
people thought they could.
I had him as like a 7 seed. I know we went through our preseason stuff, you know, in the preseason, but I don't think we really talked about the Chargers a whole lot. I viewed them as a team that's going to just kind of like have a floor raised because of coaching and a new culture, and you get Alt in there at tackle, who's just been an absolute stud.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and which, by the way, Joe Alt Delete is like one of the best nicknames in
Oh, it's
sports.
so good.
It's so
He
good,
does it.
and
He's so good.
he lives up to it. So I was like, okay, like we've got something here, but I still looked at that team and said, you're going to have a pretty solid defense. Your floor is going to be raised by coaching,
They're building the trenches clearly, doing it
but
right.
you are lacking talent in some pretty key areas.
Yeah. Well,
And
I have some stats for this to back that up because that was one thing I was going to say. Obviously, what they need to do in the offseason, go get a wide receiver. Either pay someone, go get a T. Higgins. I don't know what they're going to do,
Mhm.
draft, whatever. If you look at their receiving box score, it's ridiculous. It
It's Lad
shows
McConkey, and
it,
then
it's Lad McConkey with 9 receptions for 197 yards and a touchdown. The second guy is Will Disley, a blocking tight end with 2 receptions for 16 yards.
which, by the
So
way, pick hit him in the hands before eventually getting intercepted.
yeah.
Still wasn't the
But
greatest throw, but
no, but again, you look at that and you clearly see where the weaknesses are for this team. They also they do need to they essentially go need to go get skill position players. They need to
mhm.
get a running back too. Like stealing the Ravens backfield last season worked for a year, but like I'm sorry, but J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards are not those aren't franchise running backs. No, you don't necessarily need franchise. You don't need you don't need to go find, a Saquon or a Derrick Henry. You don't need
Mhm.
that. But you need something that's more reliable than Gus Edwards and J.K.
Yeah,
Dobbins.
those are
You
guys
need
that
an
are
answer.
are hurt every year.
Yeah, they're hurt every
Um,
year. They can flash you for a game or two.
yeah,
Go on a 4 week stretch where they're the best running back ever, but you need consistency there. And I do think this is a bit of an indictment on Justin Herbert not showing up now in the 2 playoff games that he's been in. But also, yeah, clearly, if you just look at this receiving box score, like you see where the problem is, and this
hmm
team needs to get better on the ends. They need better tight ends too. But the thing is that they've done this the right way, drafting Joe Alt. I think their defense will continue to be good. A top 15 or so defense. This is what Harbaugh does. Like he's got good offensive lines, good defense, run the ball well. You just need to have an answers, at the wide receiver position, so that way you're not obvious who you're throwing it to when you're throwing it to Lad McConkey 14 times for 9 receptions for almost
yeah,
200 yards here. Like clearly it's an issue. And seriously, if you take away Lad McConkey, there you can beat him. It's kind of how this works.
yeah. And I think another part that I don't want to go like unnoticed here is I talked about this a lot when he was with the Ravens, but Greg Roman is just not, to me,
Yeah,
a good offensive play caller, and I think
he's
you
not
know.
he's not
Uh,
original. He's not creative.
and I think a big part not that Herbert like what was only making these mistakes because of play calling, but I think a play call like you know rolling out to your right, throwing across deep to the left side of the field is just not a good like play
Just
design. It's
don't.
just not
Yeah,
a good pass
the
concept.
the fact that there's a guy over there in the play, right? It just shows that this is
Yeah, like
all those
that's
guys need to be sliding. If you're
like
doing a rollout to the right, everyone's sliding that way.
that
That's
like
how
that
that needs to
was
be.
that was clearly like what that play was trying to unlock. And there were two defenders there, and
Yeah.
really the only option on that play was try to throw it up there. And sure, you could say, poor decision making on Herbert's part. Maybe he needs to look, in the tiers of those and go to a different option, and or maybe even throw it away. But
Yeah.
I don't think play calling is going to be doing him any favors there. it
No.
really, I just want to get to a point where um, I can for sure say that there are no excuses. I don't think there's any excuses to throw four interceptions
No.
in a playoff game when you're as talented
Yeah.
as you are as a quarterback. But still, there are things with Herbert where I'm not going to write him off
Mm-mm.
because there isn't talent where there needs to be talent. There's not good play calling where there needs to be good play calling. And realistically, I do want to give the Texans credit, even though offensively they have fallen off of a cliff. And, obviously there's been a sophomore slump for CJ Stroud. There's been injuries to the receiving core that are, coming from a Rams fan. Sometimes those are just like too much to overcome
Yeah.
in this pass heavy league. But their defense has been pretty solid, and especially when it comes to generating turnovers off of interceptions, and to get
Hmm.
four more in this game,
Yeah. You
I,
give when your offense is lacking, your defense got to step up and just give
and
them more opportunities at the ball. You know.
Derek Stingley Jr. is a dog. They
Yeah.
have two
Talk
corn
about a guy who's not having a sophomore slump, who had a terrible first year, but he's shown
two
up.
they got two corners that have really good ball skills, and we saw that in this game. Part of the reason why there are four interceptions are because
Yeah.
of those guys. I don't think that they're going to stand a chance
Yeah.
playing the Chiefs, as we'll kind of get into talking
Yeah.
ahead. But that was another game where it was just somebody had to win that game. To me, it
Yep.
was one of those. It was like the dark version of like Commanders Buccaneers, where it's like those are two teams that everybody kind of loves, and like you almost wish they didn't play each other yet, because I still wanted both those teams to be alive. But it was a really close game, and whoever won that game, I was going to be happy to see go on to the next round. Whereas with the Texans and the Chargers, I was like, I almost don't want either of these teams to win.
Yeah.
And I didn't really want either of them to be here to begin with.
Yeah.
I do think a big part of this, though, for me, where going into the game, I was not too confident in the Chargers. Was they were, and maybe this is just my own personal thing here, but they were road favorites over the Texans. And I don't typically like that, especially when, again, I'm looking at this team and I'm saying, Greg Roman's calling your plays. You haven't really had too many explosives. You're lacking talent in certain areas. And it's the first year with this new, organizational, restructure, basically. And I was
Right.
like, I don't care that the Texans aren't looking great. This is still a home playoff game, and it's not like the Chargers have earned that right to me. And so
Hmm.
I wasn't too surprised to see them lose. I was very surprised to see the fashion in which they lost. So
Yeah. Well, and
that's
I
kind
mean,
of the battle for worst team in the playoff, really,
yeah.
was between those two teams.
And yeah, they're just in. I mean, Texans were in there of the seed they were because they won the division in a bad division.
Hmm.
But I will say, CJ Stroud had the best play of the weekend. The snap going over his head or whatever, and then
Oh
throwing
yeah, it
that
rolls
dime.
out.
Like that
Hmm.
was awesome. So yeah, Texan season's probably over. Come this time next week. But
Yeah.
hey, they got their win. They got to rub it in Rex Ryan's face a little bit, saying the Chargers had a bye week, which apparently they had that like in their locker room. They were like rallying around that. I saw their Instagram live, them calling out Rex
Oh
Ryan
yeah.
on that. So happy for that. Another team that played garbage. Another quarterback that played garbage. Jordan Love. Jordan
Hmm.
Love threw three picks. Eagles won again. These games really weren't. You know, I expected the Eagles to win. The Eagles are just a better team. I did not expect the Packers to play this bad. And but Jordan Love, this is kind of who he is. He'll throw the most impressive, insane play ever. He'll have four touchdowns, but he followed with two just terrible picks. It's the gunslinger thing. He looks a lot like Brett Favre. Super talented. Um, but this is also another team that definitely needs to upgrade the wide receiver position. Like everyone was like, "Oh, they've got some good wide receivers." I'm like, bro, they really don't. Like people try to gaslight themselves into thinking that these wide receivers were good.
They had like
Um,
five wide receiver two and threes basically on
yeah,
their team. They had
and
depth, but of all like second or third
no
guys.
one's first choice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously
And
Josh,
Christian Watson tears his ACL, and he would have been like the
and he's
number
like a number
one
two, and he's a
at
number two,
least.
and
Yeah,
he's a number two,
he's a number 2 on like
maybe
an
even a number
average
three,
team.
dude.
Yeah.
I like he's okay. Um, So yep, so the Eagles, handle business there. They didn't even play great, but they, take care of business, get it done. We will see how that continues. But yeah, Jordan Love got paid some money, so they gotta figure some stuff out there. Hopefully they can get some answers for get some pass catchers there. One thing I do want to say real quick, before, we kind of mentioned the Broncos a little bit. I do just want to say, as much as the Broncos got demolished, and that was probably not a fun time for Broncos fans, um, I probably think they don't care because this was their first playoff appearance for the Broncos since they won the Super Bowl 50 with Peyton Manning.
Yeah.
Um, rookie quarterback, second year. I mean, not second year with his team and Sean Payton. Um, I think the Broncos still look at this season as a success. Paying all this money they're still owed to Russell Wilson,
Hmm.
having this massive dead cap hit, paying this guy to not play football for them, and then making the playoffs. I think if the Broncos, I mean, obviously they need to get more talent. That defense played legit. Greg Joseph, Vance Joseph, coming back being D coordinator for them. That front seven was legit. So
Patrick Surtain might be Defensive Player of the Year this year.
yeah, he's awesome. You just need to fill out, some of that secondary, get him some help, some safeties. I think you need to figure out your running back position too. Like, I don't think Javonte Williams isn't an answer. Um,
No.
he's a backup. He can come in, help you out, get you 40 yards a game if you need him. But that's more than he is. So they need some answers there. They need to help him out. They also need to just, they still need to find a true wide receiver one for this team. Some dynamic guy, some yak guy, really, some dude who's dangerous with the ball in his hands. Clearly they need that. But happy for the Broncos fans. They should be happy. So we haven't really talked about it yet, but we talked a little bit. But Steelers, laid a goose egg.
Hmm.
They after they got dude, it. Mike Tomlin isn't beating the allegations anymore, dude. Gets a winning season and then does nothing. They won 10 games and I think they lost how many out? Like four out? Final four?
Yeah, I
Three?
think they lost their last four.
Yeah. So like they won 10, they got to 10 wins sitting at like 10 and 3, something like that. And then ended the season 10 and 7. Ended up, getting into the playoffs because they started hot. Russ did play pretty well for them when he kind of came into that role. But I'm not a Steelers fan, so I don't watch
Me
a lot
either.
of I don't watch a lot of Steelers games. I don't have like, obviously I've had kind of the meme of me rooting for Russ, which, I'm gonna do, but like they're now what? They now get like the 20th pick or some 21st pick. They're winning enough games where, they may be getting the playoffs, maybe don't. They haven't won a playoff game in it's like eight seasons, something like that. They haven't won a playoff game. Um, Part of me is wondering at what point do they not care about Mike Tomlin getting a winning record? Like I'm getting to the point. If I was a fan, I'd be ready to call. I would call for his job just because I'm like, dude, I don't care that you go 9-8 every year. I don't care that you're the most winning seasons in a row as a head coach. I don't
Hmm.
care. I want to see success for my team, and because uh, since you're a good team, you're not getting good players because TJ Watts don't fall into your lap like he did because no one drafted him and they picked him at like 22 or whatever when they drafted him. But like I don't know, man. Like, if you're a Steelers fan, let me know. I feel like I would be really, really annoyed at this point, and like this isn't good enough. Almost
You
like with
know,
Pete Carroll last year. Like Pete Carroll was like, they're winning 9 games, they're winning 10 games. Look in the playoffs, they don't win, and it's like I was kind of happy the Seahawks were willing to like part with him to try and get someone better, and this guy improved on their record. Like, I don't know. I feel like I'd
I'm
be tired about it.
I'm about to make a crazy comp here.
Okay,
Tomlin's player comp is Aaron Rodgers trying to not throw
mm,
interceptions
dude,
during the
absolutely.
regular season and
Yeah,
then like
like
not doing anything because it's like, oh, he's not really taking risks because he's just like trying to not get
not throw
interceptions
three
on his.
interceptions. Yeah, he just
Yeah,
wants to keep it at two.
because every time with the Steelers, and again, I'll play a homer card a little bit, but it's like Sean McVay has had seasons where we don't have guys and we win, 7 games or whatever. We
Mhm.
have like a down year, we don't make the playoffs,
You
whatever.
went like
But it,
5-11, a
yeah,
couple
but
years ago.
all the guys are hurt. Nobody is like, gonna all of a sudden that say McVay is a bad coach. But then when it comes time. we draft, we get the players we
Hmm.
need, we restock, we
Bounce back.
regain. And he's obviously like a coaching plus what
Hmm.
McVay does. And I'm not saying that Tomlin isn't a coaching plus, but when you stack up all of these things and you look at all these awesome coaches who have won playoff games over the years, um, some guys can make, something out of nothing. And I think there's certainly something to be said about what he can do in the regular season again with the quarterback play. Because I generally don't think that you can have a really good coach and a not so good quarterback and like actually consistently
Yeah.
win. I mean,
You the
it's
you
the whole
have to
point of the
have
playoffs.
you have to have a coaching quarterback. You have
Yeah,
to.
I realistically I would say the only exception this postseason of coaching quarterbacks of teams that you know maybe didn't have the better coach and quarterback or had the better coach and quarterback and didn't win is maybe the Packers, depending on how you
Hmm.
feel about Jordan Love, because I don't obviously love Nick Sirianni. I don't think Jalen Hurts is a great quarterback. I would probably rather have Jordan Love. But
Yeah,
they
Jalen
have
Hurts is a B tier quarterback. He's a B
yeah,
quarterback.
but they have way more talent on their
Yeah.
team. And then if we're looking at the Chargers, you might say, Harbaugh and Herbert over Stroud and D'Amico Ryans. I don't know, maybe that one's a little bit closer.
You can make that
Right
argument.
right now, but otherwise you go down the list here and you have, ultimately the better coach, the better quarterback on all of these teams. And when you look at Steelers and Ravens, I'm not a big John Harbaugh guy either personally. I think he
Sure.
suffers from a lot of the same things that the Steelers do, where you have these regular seasons, it's great. You go to the
You
playoffs,
win
maybe you
13
win a playoff
games.
game. You have, right now a two-time MVP, maybe to be three-time MVP quarterback, and we still haven't seen like that, consistent deep playoff run with the Super Bowl push that we have
Yeah,
seen with other teams in that amount of time.
right.
But at least with the Ravens, like they can get to an AFC title game. They can get past the wild card round.
Mhm.
They at least do have a quarterback, so we know that like okay, there's weaknesses in other areas. I feel like with Tomlin still, it's like I think he's a good coach, but I almost like feel like I can't tell for sure until he actually gets a good quarterback. But then he's like never seemingly trying to get a good quarterback. I
Yeah.
I
Well, I
still feel
think
like
that
that's part of
too.
the coach's job is to like help
Yeah.
go get the guy that you want. And sometimes when he goes and gets
Yeah.
the guy that he wants, it's not the guy, or he like just doesn't care to get the guy because
He's gonna
I'm
win
I'm
it the
sure
Steeler
he's
way.
yeah, I'm
He's
sure he's
gonna.
so confident in himself. He's been there what 16, 17 years at this
Yeah.
point. But that's why I think there's probably you might want to start looking for a change. I personally feel if as a Rams fan, if I had a head coach who I thought was as like let's say we have Sean McVay now, but then we have 10 more years of Sean McVay, and in those 10 years we don't do anything in the playoffs. I'm not
Lot.
going to
Lot.
sit here
Yeah.
and be like, well, I'm happy to just win in the regular season. I would rather have a bad regular season and bounce back
Yeah.
later on in those years instead of just
Get
always
a
being
get
here.
a game changer on the field, right? Get one of
Yeah.
those guys like I think of even like the 49ers, like they've been good now, and a lot of their guys that they've drafted, whereas when they were terrible, like Nick Bosa, they got with like the second overall pick, right? And he's been
Hmm.
a stud. Like there is a rhythm to this thing that you kind of have to do. And there's some of these teams that are just like they win 8, 9, 10 games and maybe get in the playoffs, lose, maybe randomly win a one game here, but get bounced out. And where they end up picking, they can't get one of these guys. They're just outside of getting these game changer guys. Being able to
Hmm.
trade up then for a quarterback, if you hover around the 10th pick, maybe able to trade up, those types of things that you need that to sustain success, like real success, not like winning, having multiple winning seasons as a coach. Like, I guess that's a success, but like, is that really the success you want your franchise to be? Is like winning 9 games a year? Like, is that
Hmm.
like that's not success for the Chiefs? That's not success for the Patriots. With Belichick and Brady, that was a failure. And yet
Hmm.
they're kind of you're kind of like mediocrity is the enemy of success. Like just being okay with that. Like and
Hmm.
like and some of the things that they've continued to not address for this team, like they have not been able to address this O line's been terrible for the last like half decade, like,
Hmm.
and that was an issue. And again, I'll bring it back to Pete Carroll. That was an issue for the last like 5, 6 years. Like
Exactly.
these defensive coaches who like maybe have won a Super Bowl. Carroll and Tomlin both won a Super Bowl, um, but then can't figure out how to get there, or break through again. And you see them make some trades to get rid. At least on the Seahawks side, they traded Max Unger for Jimmy Graham, and that offensive line has been terrible since. Like,
Hmm.
it's just it's one of these things where these defensive coaches can't figure out these certain things. So I'd say like I think Tomlin and Carroll are going to be in the Hall of Fame for coaching because they've if you look at their overall record and their wins and their
Hmm.
accomplishments, like absolutely not taking away from what they've done, but where are they going?
Yeah.
And what are they doing now? And so I think honestly what the Steelers should, as someone who's not a fan of this team, who has no horse in this race, they should trade him to a team that like would absolutely kill for a 9-8 season, or kill like a bear. Like, are you telling me the Bears would not trade 2 first-round picks for Mike Tomlin? Like, he's what they need. He's a dude. Like, he's an alpha kind of guy who's gonna go in, do what he wants. But like, trade him now where you could get a first and a third, a first and a second, or whatever. Because if you keep running back these 9-win seasons, these 10-win seasons, I think people are really gonna start to wise up to like this is not success.
Yeah.
Um,
And, it, I think his superpower is like, team culture
yeah, he's a
and
great
that comes
leader of
with it.
guys. He's
But,
a great
but,
leader.
but when that's your superpower, you can't overcompensate for having poor quarterback play. You can be a guy like I personally, again, maybe I'm just a hater. Well, I actually am a hater, but Sirianni, like, I'm like, what do you do here? When I watch him. But at the same time, it's like, okay, like
Clearly, they're
he's
winning.
he's he's surrounded by more talent, and so whatever he's doing for the quote unquote culture seems to be working enough,
It's
even though there's a
enough.
lot of turmoil on that team right now. So maybe that's a bad example. But again, he's a coach where he's like, I don't specialize. Like, I'm not Sean McVay. I'm not Shanahan. I'm not Mike McDaniel, or Mike McDonald. I don't have this superpower where I am a defensive coordinator or an offensive coordinator where I can go in here and, run this game this way. And, there's kind of the meme that like Shanahan secretly loves like having all of his guys hurt so he can just be like a football sicko and just like do all of these weird things with like these nobodies. And everybody's
Yeah,
like, how did this fifth string running back rush for 100 yards? Oh, it's because, his concepts are so crazy. You don't really get that with a guy who's just like, I'm here to like lead and
yeah.
be this
Well,
team
again,
guy.
if you do that, like it, you have to, yeah, you have to surround yourself like Dan Campbell's kind of that way. I don't
Hmm.
necessarily know what he does because they've got an awesome, OC who's going to have a head coaching job if he wants it. Like he's choice number one for every team.
Aaron
Um,
Glenn is also going to be
yeah,
getting head
like,
coaching.
but he knows at least who to surround himself with and get it done.
And it seems like that's kind of what Tomlin lacks. And I think a lot of
Yeah,
that is also, again, you've been somewhere for so long. You're just at some point, you're
yeah,
just putting the fries in the bag, bro.
yeah. I think there's an element of yeah, when you've been somewhere for so long, you start to not see things, right?
Hmm.
Like that's just true of life. Like if you're at a job for so long, like you don't end up seeing, the hole in the wall, the
Yeah.
drywall that's been there for 20 years that no one's fixed because
Yeah.
everyone just doesn't see it, right? I just wonder, like I look at a team like the Seahawks and like Mike McDonald's a dude. Like, and
Hmm.
he's awesome, and he's completely different from Pete Carroll, but he's brought something fresh and new to a franchise that I think has needed something. And that's no slight to Pete Carroll; he's the greatest coach our
Hmm.
franchise has seen. I love him to death, and I love hearing him talk and all that kind of stuff. But like, it was clear that they made the right choice to move on from him.
Yeah.
And again, to say on that, like they upgraded they won one more game this season. They improved their divisional record. They went 4-2 in the division, where they were 2-4 last year. Like clearly that has been beneficial for this team, and I think that this is a team in the Steelers that kind of need to do that and kind of just move on. It's not to disrespect the guy. It's not to say that he's trash. It's to
Yeah.
say like we just need something new. You've been here for a long
Yeah.
time. We're grateful for what you've done, but we need someone who will fix the hole in the
Yeah.
wall.
Two things can be true. You can be a good coach, and we need a new perspective.
They did it with
And
Belichick,
yeah,
and they kind of needed to with Belichick. He's the greatest coach of all time, and it was clear that
it was
his time
time.
was done. His time was
Yeah.
done. So
Yeah.
I just think that time's now, and I think that if the Steelers are smart, they should trade him. because there will absolutely be a team that will give up a first for him.
Yeah.
A high
Again,
first.
I understand that that would be kind of against their organizational beliefs. But I don't know. We've seen changes to that in recent history with
It's
guys being let go from coordinating positions where that used to never happen, and they pride themselves on having how like a handful of coaches over the you know
yeah,
tens of years of history with their team. But I think again, yeah, if they wanted to, you know, play it smart, I think there would be plenty of teams out there. Well, maybe not plenty, but enough teams out there who would be like drooling at the chance to be like, oh, we don't have to go through this, like, finding all of the people who know Sean McVay to bring them in for a coaching interview because,
right.
he went to school with him in third grade or something.
Yeah.
It like you
Said
could
hi to him on a
definitely
walk one
rake
time.
somebody over the coals and trade Tomlin to him for something. But
And you do
um,
right by him. Like, you're like, hey man,
yeah,
we want to do this. Where out of the places available, where would you like to go? This is the decision we're gonna make. So we want to do right by you. And I think they would. The Steelers they're a good organization. They've treated guys right. Like I think they would. But also like think about it, dude. Like Andy Reid needed a fresh start.
hmm
Like Andy Reid did, and it was great for his career. And he went off and has now won three Super Bowls and might win a fourth and do a three-peat. First time ever.
hmm
Like sometimes it's just time. And so I just think that's where they're at. And so speaking of coaches, though, there's been a couple things that have happened in the coaching circus. So every year it holds true that there are six coaches fired. This time it was technically kind of seven kind of, because
kind of,
Mike
yeah.
McCarthy and Jerry Jones could not reach an agreement on a new deal, which I've never really seen that. It's usually like they just get fired. Never like, yeah, we're just gonna go our separate ways because we couldn't reach a new deal. Like that's just interesting. But I'll stand by this that clearly I don't think Jerry Jones wanted him because if he really did, he would keep him.
Just
Every
sign
guy
it,
that
you cut the check.
every time that Jerry Jones has wanted a guy, he gets his guy and just pays him an absorbent amount of money.
hmm
So clearly that didn't work out. So there are now six because the seventh position was filled. Patriots fired Gerard Mayo like 20 seconds after the season ended.
Yeah.
Dude, they had like an 8 page, like they had like a big whole thing wrote out and for that decision. So clearly this was not wrote up directly after the game. Like they were sitting on this,
Yeah.
but Gerard Mayo goes. And the obvious choice, Mike Vrabel is hired, comes back
Yeah.
home. Honestly, dude, the Patriots might be one of the better positions to go to, head coaching jobs to go to. If you look at how the organizations are run, Ruppercraft is good owner. Clearly, he's a big reason why they have as many Super Bowls as they did and that dynasty existed. And also Drake May he's shown some flashes. He can be a guy. I'd much rather go there than I would somewhere like the Jets or the Bears. You look at some of these other openings, like the Saints are in cap hell. So Mike Vrabel goes home. It was pretty obvious that's what was happening. That
hmm
was going to happen. So we'll be interested to see where we'll at some point we'll probably rank some of these available spots. The Saints. We've got now I'm blanking on all of them. Oh,
Bears.
yes. NFL head. Sorry, this is terrible. This is so bad. Um, so obviously the Cowboys, the Bears, the Jets, the Jaguars. That's one.
Jaguars.
Jaguars, Saints, Raiders. So that's what's open. Yeah, I'll be interested to see. I know some like the Bears have had a couple interviews. They interviewed Ben Johnson. They've interviewed Pete Carroll. So we'll see where this happens. I imagine a couple of these announcements will happen here soon.
I will
Um,
say I think Pete Carroll to the Bears would be a really bad decision. Uh, Only because Caleb Williams has already had his rookie year. He has a head coach fired. He has an interim coach who's maybe even worse. And then you bring in another coach who, yeah, as good of a coach as Pete Carroll may, still have, he doesn't have that much juice left in the tank. And so you're going to turn around and say,
in terms of yeah, he's old. Like
yeah, like this,
it's gonna happen.
like
He's probably
you,
got 3 or 4 years, maybe.
yeah, and it's also like he's not the mind that you would want to like pair up with Caleb Williams, and this is why like a few weeks ago, kind of when we started looking into some of the next head coaching availabilities, I was like, I know there's maybe a conflict of interest here with it being in division, but Ben Johnson to the Lions would be like the best thing that could happen for Caleb
Oh yeah.
Williams.
If
And
Ben
also
Johnson's
he's,
smart, he'll stay away from it though, because that ownership is terrible. Like
yeah,
all of these jobs here that are opening, it's the bad ownership for the most part. Like it's the Shad Khan with the Jaguars is not a like
terrible.
he's terrible. I think Saints owner isn't. I don't think he's got a bad reputation. I don't think he's
I don't know, but who wants to go to the Saints? They're
yeah.
terrible for,
The Raiders. Al Davis is a Mark Davis
yeah,
is a idiot. Like these are
yeah.
all places that like head coach like you don't really want to go there. Like
You have to really love the like it. I mean, if you're telling me that, hey, you can come here and you can coach Caleb Williams and Roma Dunze, like have a solid defense already, and it's the Bears, it's a historic franchise, then
yeah,
you're probably selling that over some of those other franchises there. But it could very well be hey, I'm gonna wait another
another
year.
year.
The situation, especially if they
If they
win,
don't,
a
yeah,
Super Bowl,
yeah.
a lot of that can change. But yeah, I think anybody who has a younger rookie quarterback should probably not be hiring a guy of Pete Carroll's age. That's just my opinion.
I
Um,
think you should go to the Jaguars.
but I mean, yeah,
That feels like a
go
Pete Carroll vibe.
go retire in Jacksonville, Florida. Like,
Yeah,
what are we doing here? You
yeah.
played a lot of games in the rain.
Go enjoy the
Let's
sun.
yeah, let's go to
You at least have an
Jacksonville.
answer at a quarterback for the next couple of years because they're not
Yeah,
trading him. They're not
it'll
cutting
help
him.
your joints. Maybe you'll feel a little bit younger.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
But
but
yeah, so it'll be interesting to see where we continue on with our head coach situation. I will say the last game though, so we're talking about the only good game. And we'll kind of speed through this one because we've been going long here. The Commanders win a last second doink field goal against the Bucks. Baker Mayfield has a crucial fumble. Also a really weird timing handoff run play towards the end of that game. Um, these Commanders, man, they're frisky. Like they are winning these. Like I don't even know if you can consider it frisky when they've won 12 games. Like it's not like a 10-win team that's kind of just got in. Um,
yeah, I mean
Dan
the
Quinn has been legit. He has like every time I've watched them, like they've made all the right choices with clock management. Like obviously he's a pro. He's been in this league for a long time.
mhm.
He's won a Super Bowl as a coordinator, been to a Super Bowl as a head coach. Like I am happy for this team. I'm happy for this fan base has just had it's fascinating. The minute
First
they got
playoff win in 20 years.
yeah, dude, the second they get rid of Dan Snyder, they're successful. It's interesting how that works sometimes,
Yeah,
man.
who would have thought?
Who would have thunk it? So yeah, Commanders get it done. Jane Daniels continues. I mean, he's gonna win Offensive Rookie of the Year. I think there's been a couple great, I think Bo Nix had a great season. But when you
Brock
just look at the
Bowers
Brock
has
Bowers
like
been legit.
yeah, probably
Um,
been like a top three tight end all year. But
Joe Alt might be the top three left tackle in the league
yeah,
already.
yeah,
But you just look at the success of what he's done for this franchise, and dude, his clutchness, dude, it's
that's what I was
these
gonna say.
dude, it's these it's the fourth quarters when he shows up. It's crazy.
And low key, I know we're gonna start talking about the divisional round soon, but like watching how this game ended, obviously, kind of a collapse by the Bucks.
Yeah,
That fumble was tragic because I think they didn't have too many possessions in the game, but that Buccaneers offense was looking pretty solid
dude, they were like
throughout.
one of the hottest offenses last couple of weeks. Like they were blowing out some teams.
Yeah, and Baker was playing well that game aside from that fumble, but yeah, you have a mismanaged handoff on that jet sweep, and I almost don't know if he was trying to pull it because he didn't hand it off
It
cleanly
was
with one
weird. It
hand.
was funky.
He had two hands on the ball, so I was like, I don't really know what was going on there. You do have that weird run play
We're like
where they end up having to settle
the
for the
offensive
field
line
goal.
didn't move, and so then he didn't, or like the running
Rookie
back didn't.
rookie
Yeah,
center, I think, timed that snap wrong, and so
yeah,
absolutely bungled it there. And obviously the Todd Bowles defense isn't what it used to be
yeah.
in Tampa, and that offense. Cliff Kingsbury got to give him his flowers here. Usually
There was a little bit of a cool off there. There was like a two, 3 game
there's usually the
stretch.
cliff dip, but it's come back. And I
And
think
that's
that
new. That
offense
is a
being
new Kingsbury thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I think that offense being a little bit healthier at the end of the year. I know Jane Daniels had that thing kind of towards the middle of the year where he had a rib issue, but yeah, they've been winning these really close games.
And
Um,
he's the reason why.
and he's the reason why. And you have, talent at wide receiver, obviously. And so they're going to be kind of frisky. I don't want to get into our divisional round stuff just yet, but yeah, huge win for them. Obviously, the best game of the weekend, and I'm glad we at least had one. But again, I think that seventh seed playoff team situation. I kind of go back and forth sometimes. Like I usually want to say that the wild card, round of football is like one of my favorite weekends of football because you get Saturday, Sunday, Monday football with, single slated games where it's just like,
Yeah,
okay, this is appointment viewing. It's appointment viewing morning, afternoon, and evening.
yeah,
And I don't have to try to juggle, all these different scores for games happening at the same time.
right.
But you usually end up having, six games. Maybe two of them are going to be good because you got two seeds going against
Yeah.
seven seeds.
Well, and
Um,
especially now, yeah, especially now with the seventh team, and now the second seed doesn't have a bye.
yeah,
Like
which
that
I
means
also
that
think
mean,
is
and
like,
sometimes the only difference between a second seed and a one seed might even be a tiebreaker early in the season. Like they might be just an insane, like the Bills are an insanely good team, and they might win the Super Bowl. Like that's how good they are, and they're out here playing the
yeah,
seventh seed, and it's like you've just increased the gap, the skill gap, for these
yeah.
teams.
We
And
have
so
almost half of the teams in the NFL basically like get to make the playoffs. It's like
14 out
it
of 32. Like
yeah,
that's
it's fine to have the six team. I liked having the two buys. I thought
I did too.
it meant you had a little bit more to fight for.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. I'm really it's lame. Like it's like if you don't get the one seed now, teams don't care. Like it's like
yeah.
whatever.
But regardless, wild card weekend can be very hit or miss now because of that. I like the volume of games, the quality isn't there. But as we start getting into the divisional round, I think the divisional round is now my new favorite week of football.
Yeah.
And not just because I think most of these matchups are going to be good, maybe
There's
except
one
for
I'm
one.
looking at this week. Yep. There's
Yeah,
the first one we've got here.
the first one, but otherwise it's like, hey, you got four games. You have two Saturday, two Sunday. They're all going to be appointment viewing. They should all be bangers, or at least you're going to look at them
I'm not
ahead of time and
I
be
wouldn't be
like,
surprised if any one of these outside from this one game, any one of these teams won. Like if they end up upsetting, right? I'm like, yeah, right. I'd see that. You
yeah,
know,
exactly. Whereas you can look at wild card and say, I can kind of expect this to be a stomping.
Broncos
So
are gonna lose to the Bills. That's probably happening.
yeah, like they're gonna get destroyed. But yeah, you go to the divisional round and now you're kind of at the point where you've trimmed some of the fat,
Yeah.
but you're still like, one team might dominate the other, but now, yeah, I think three of these four games could potentially be coin flips.
Yeah. Well, why don't we just get into that? We'll save our this last question because I want to just get to our pick 'em here. So we've got our divisional round weekend. Obviously we will get everyone else's picks in here, but we're picking all the games. There's four. There are 8 teams left in this thing. So I will go first. I guess we're skipping Matt. If I'll go first. First one we got, I put here first because there's not a whole lot to talk about. I don't feel like. It's the Texans at the Chiefs. I kind of already mentioned
Mhm.
it. Yeah, that's kind of just how it goes. The number one seed plays the lowest seed that is left, and that's kind of how this continues to work. Texans at the Chiefs. Yeah, Texans have given me nothing this year. They've taken a step back clearly, and again, I'm not betting against Chiefs at anything. So that's how it goes. So unfortunately, Texans had a good game. It was a fun couple weeks for them. Um, but yeah, Chiefs are gonna do it.
Yeah, as always, until it changes, it's the Chiefs. It's the Tom Brady effect. It's the Patrick Mahomes effect. Um, until there's better reason to do it, I'm not gonna pick against them. And you know, I had picked them going to the Super Bowl again this year. Um, I'm obviously not a Chiefs fan, but if some of the other teams that I'm kind of rooting for, aside from my own, aren't in that position, I probably will be rooting for a Chiefs three-peat just for the sake of being able to say I saw an NFL three-peat in real time,
Yeah,
and somehow a team that went 15 and 2 in the regular season, 15 and 1 with Patrick Mahomes playing in the regular season, like flew under the radar.
Hmm.
Like I feel like I haven't seen the social media narratives or just like the buzz around Patrick
Yeah.
Mahomes and the Chiefs in the
It's
same
always
way that I
been like they're
have.
good, but not this good. Not as good as
Yeah.
last year. Not as good
And,
as the year
and
before.
now it's like, they effectively go 15-1 because they rest everybody in the last week because again, it's been locked up by a mile at that point, but um might expect a little bit of rust. A lot of these guys, but like Patrick, haven't played since like Christmas.
Yeah.
So, you know, but this is a team week in, week out.
But again,
They're
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 also
just gonna
playing
win.
probably the weakest team out of the last
Yeah,
the eighth
of
best
all of
team.
these teams here, this is the
It
weakest one.
yeah, it works out for them to if they do have some rest, they'll probably weather it. So
Yeah, it's going to
uh
be a good defense. It's not going to be a cakewalk, but
no,
I think they're eventually going to settle in, and they shouldn't have too
they'll
many
win by
problems.
double digits, probably 28-17, something like
Yeah,
that is probably what it'll be. Um so I'll stick with you and we'll go I'm kind of going out of order here because I want to save the other ones. But so we've got this next one that I'm guessing probably go the same way, but still should be a good game. We got the Commanders at the Lions.
hmm
Is this our? I don't know if this is our last game of the weekend, but
This is Saturday, 5 p.m.
oh, never mind. I was completely wrong. So we've got Commanders at the Lions. The Lions, obviously, they also locked up their one seed, the NFC. Um, Unfortunately, Dan Campbell kind of cursed the Vikings by saying the whole "I'll see you in 2 weeks"
The Rams use that
thing.
as bulletin board material.
Yep. So they did not see them in 2 weeks. They're seeing the Commanders instead. They're seeing Jaden Daniels. Um, So the Lions have had some time to hopefully rest some of their guys. They've been very like they've kind of hobbled. I mean, I don't even know if I'd say hobbled because they've still won these big games, but they have clearly, if you look at their injury report, they have lost a lot of guys, but they have weathered the storm here. Jamison, who do you got here? Commanders at Lions.
I'm gonna pick the Lions here. I honestly wouldn't be surprised by a Commanders upset, though. I will say, I think you have a lot of strength on weakness versus strength on weakness in this matchup with the offenses versus the defenses in this
Yep.
game. But the Lions have at least been here before. I do think that Dan Campbell and Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn, just as a unit, kind of have the leg up in the coaching department as well. I think
Hmm.
Ben Johnson's going to do some sicko stuff against this Commanders defense. We're going to have Penei Sewell running a route or throwing a pass or something crazy
Oh
like
yeah.
that. Um,
Oh, he's gonna run it for 80-yard touchdown. Calling it.
yeah, but I do think it has a chance to be closer
Mhm.
than maybe you might initially expect when you consider what the Lions were this season versus the Commanders. But um, uh, I'm going to say the Lions here.
Yeah.
And once more of these picks unfold, I'll kind of paint the picture of what I'm anticipating later on in the NFC. But yeah, I'm ultimately going to pick the Lions. The Commanders have been an awesome story. I just don't know if they're quite there yet.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sticking the same here. For a lot of the same reasons. I think it's honestly, and I think I texted this. Dan Quinn deserves his flowers for Coach of the Year candidate. Like,
hmm
dude, this team won like 5 games last year, or I don't know how many it was. Six. I don't remember how many it was. Um.
Not enough for me to
Yeah.
remember.
Yeah. They terrible, and they've won 12 games, not 13. Like, are you kidding me? How is that not an insane story? And it's because the Eagles have been so good that it's
Yeah.
getting overshadowed that it didn't win the division. You won 12 games first year as a head coach's position with a rookie quarterback. Like that's insane. And he's done everything right. He has not lost so many games. And has just he's put some good people around him as well. I still think that there are some questions on this defense. I think this defense uh it's kind of a mix of old and new. It's kind of weird. I think, they have Bobby Wagner, who's also, by the way, still one of the best linebackers. He's still been great for this
Even though
team.
we got trucked by Baker.
He did get trucked by Baker, but still a great leader for that defense. Um, Dan Quinn's been legit, like he has, and
Yep.
so deserves his flowers. But I do think that yeah, they're kind of where the Lions were at a few years ago, where it's like they shouldn't really be here, but they are. But I do think that this is a team that in the division, like you should be upset that the Commanders are here
hmm
and they're doing this with a rookie quarterback. I mean they're kind of like the Texans of last year in a lot of
Yeah.
ways.
The
Um,
last thing I want to say about this one, real quick, is we might not see a punt in this game. Not only because of the strength on weakness thing with the offenses versus the defenses, but these are both teams that love to go for it on fourth
They're
down
the
and are
two that they're 1 and 2.
successful
Yeah.
on fourth down as well. And I think that's going to be interesting because I think one thing that we've seen in previous matchups with the Lions is that sometimes teams get sucked into playing the Lions game where they're feeling like they have to be aggressive in places where they typically wouldn't be
Trick
aggressive.
plays, fake punts, fourth downs. Yeah.
And the Commanders are a team that are going to be fully equipped and ready to play that kind of
It's not,
game.
yeah, it's not foreign to them to try this, to do this stuff.
So I think that's going to be something to keep an eye out for. I think that's certainly going to be um, I think potentially a reason why the Commanders could have a shot in this game. But
Yeah.
I would still lean Lions for sure.
Yeah. Um, so next up, I'm gonna go the one involving your team, but I'll go
Hmm.
first to give you your
Hmm.
your time. We've got Rams at the Eagles. Should be another good game. I mean, all of these games are good. This should be interesting. Um, but I mean, I'm sure I know where you might go. You've kind of buried your lead a little bit.
Hmm.
But your team doesn't have Saquon, and Saquon I think has been the best player this year, like outside of a quarterback. Saquon's insane. And I think that this team does have more talent both on the defense and offense. Obviously, I don't love the coaching matchup. I think Sean McVay is way better than Sirianni. Like that's absolutely just true. But I do think that their talent is on an insane level. And they might be the most talented team in this league in terms of weapons and what they have. Both of them, like Jalen Carter's a monster. Their secondary is awesome with Queen Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, two rookies, by the way.
Hmm.
That's been awesome. So I think the Lions are going to get it done. I think it'll be a
Eagles.
really, or yeah, we want to say. I think the Eagles are going to get it done. I think this is going to be really close. I think this is probably going to be 28-24. I think it'll just be Saquon will just make some difference, get some first down to keep them offense on the field, kind of a thing, so the Rams don't get a chance back. But I do think this is going to be an insane matchup. That Rams defense coming alive like they have. It will be interesting to see how both these teams kind of play each other in terms of they both don't have a whole lot of weaknesses, like what this Rams defense has done, what this offense is capable of with the Rams. You know, with Stafford and Cup and Nakua and Kyron Williams, like they could go score 40 at easy, like every week. I also think the Eagles can because they've got just insane talent around them. Maybe not lesser on the quarterback side, but
Hmm.
their wide receivers and their running backs are great. And so I think that they're going to be Saquon's going to make some crazy play that I think is going to, and also I think the Eagles absolutely killed them a couple, earlier this season. Um, right?
Yeah, I mean that was a Saquon like 200 plus
Oh, that's
rushing yard
right.
game.
Yeah, that was insane. So I don't envision that he'll do that because I think this Rams defense has come a long way. But I do still think that they still have Saquon, and I think he's the difference maker in this game.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I got to go with my
Yeah,
boys
you
here.
got it.
Um, there's a few things in particular where I actually feel more confident now than I would have even a few weeks ago. And again, a lot of that is the defense kind of coming on in a way that I didn't expect them to. And so knowing that it's not going to just be, the Rams offense trying to go up against an Eagles defense, which is kind of proven to be one of, if not the best defenses at this
Yeah.
time of year right now. Because otherwise I wouldn't love that matchup. I think there's still something to be said about again the coach quarterback duo
Hmm.
in here I think is
Much
much
stronger.
stronger. I think the Rams can also still get it done on multiple levels offensively where we don't have a Saquon Barkley, but we have a Kyron Williams
Hmm.
and we do have a
He's very good.
Puka. And even if Cooper Kupp isn't who he was in 2021 on our Super Bowl run, he's still a savvy vet going up against rookie guys in the secondary. Um, and again, I think our defense doing what it was doing, is going to mitigate some of the Saquon stuff, not eliminate, because I don't think anybody can really do that, at least this season. But I think the other big thing for me is just generally the vibes of the team.
Hey,
Um, the
vibes are
the
important.
the vibes are important. The Rams have a couple things in the vibe department. One, again, they've kind of been there, done that. The Eagles have made a Super Bowl with this roster more or less, but not with all of these guys, and they did not win it. The Rams have been there, done that, won it with a lot of these guys before. Against kind of same situation, not all these guys, but you have a coach quarterback and a wide receiver who know what to go do to win a Super Bowl. And on top of that, you don't have diva wide receivers reading
Sure.
books on the sideline,
That's so weird.
having this weird like passive aggressive battle with your quarterback who is not winning games in a way that is quarterbacky,
Sure.
to put it that way. So, I don't love the vibes there, but it's weird because sometimes with the Eagles, it feels like that almost doesn't even matter because they are just like so talented on so many different levels. But I think when you have a Rams team who knows what they're doing, who has a coach that's going to be able to potentially scheme the pants off of the Eagles, in some ways. You have a defense who's coming on. You have an offense who can click. A Stafford who, in the postseason with the Rams, has been, with the exception of losing to the Lions by 1 point, essentially been unstoppable. I think we actually have a legitimate chance now where vibes are up, playing with house money. Eagles have a lot of expectations, don't have a better coach quarterback combo. And I just I don't think the home field advantage, not to say that they don't have a home field advantage because they absolutely do in Philadelphia, but the one thing that I've always been talking about with this Rams team is the Rams don't even really have a home field advantage themselves.
Yeah.
And they didn't have home field advantage when they had played a season, won the division, and were supposed to have home field advantage. So I think they kind of take that chip on their shoulder wherever they go, and they say, all right,
So what?
we're here. We're going to do it. And if they lose, I couldn't be more proud of where they ended up getting to after starting 1-4 in this year. But I think the Eagles are a little bit more susceptible to cracking in a way where things can kind of unravel for them. Whereas, the Rams might lose just because they're not talented enough. Um,
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
I'm going to go with the Rams.
Go with your boys.
Ultimately, the reason I'm also picking the Rams is not just because they're my team, but with my Lions pick, the script is lining up for a rematch NFC Championship game, Lions versus Rams in Detroit to go to the Super Bowl. And I think the script writers are going to make it happen. So
Yeah.
that's what we're going for here.
Yeah.
The Rams have
Alrighty.
a natural disaster buff, as
Hey,
everybody knows. Those
tragedy.
things
Tragedy
those
works,
things
man.
work. Those
It's
things
true.
work.
It's
And
true.
the Lions have a historical terrible franchise buff, and so when those two things meet,
It's when an unstoppable force meets an
yeah,
immovable object.
exactly. So I think that's what we're going for.
All right.
But
Cool.
yeah, let's
All
let's
right,
start with
but
this last one.
this
Oof,
last one I saved. I guess you're going first with
this
this
is my
one.
Super Bowl.
I know. I kind of wish this would just be the Super Bowl,
This
but
is my Super Bowl.
we've got Ravens at Bills. Two teams that I think. Well, I mean, I'll say this: I want both these teams to win a Super Bowl. Like both teams have been so close for so long. It's like because I don't have a dog in this fight, I'm just like,
Hmm.
dude, I want Lamar Jackson to get his ring. I want Josh Allen to get his ring. They've been so close so many times, but there's this dude in Kansas City who's just, a menace for these
I know,
guys. Um,
literally.
and so it's like I'm rooting for it because I feel like it needs to happen. Like for both of these teams, I'm like, dude, Josh Allen's got to get a ring. Lamar Jackson's got to get a ring. Um, and I'm struggling here. It's Jamison, lead us out.
Um, I I feel like I just have to go Ravens here. One, I do really think that Lamar has been the MVP of this season. I know that there's a lot of, Josh Allen has done more with less. I don't always think that that is what always makes an MVP. I think there are some
If
players
that's the
who,
case, Joe Burrow should have been MVP.
yeah, like yeah, and I get that Joe Burrow didn't win the games, and I get that the Bills won all these games, and they won the second seed. Sure, their division is
Beat the
pretty
Chiefs.
tragic. They did beat the Chiefs. But at the same time, the Ravens beat the Bills, and Josh Allen played one of his worst games of the season against the Ravens.
Mhm.
And so there's some of this back and forth. I just I've watched a lot of Bills this year. Josh has been great. I've watched a lot of Ravens this year, and Lamar has been unlike anything that I've ever seen at the position with what he can do. And I just think that like it's time. And I think they're going to get to an AFC championship. I think the Bills have a crazy offensive line, just not enough talent despite how good Josh Allen is. I think the Ravens, defensively they aren't what they were in the past, but you have Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, which by the way, like when this season is all said and done, I think we legitimately have to look back at this and say, of all of the quarterback running back duos like in league history for like a season, it's really hard to look past
This
this
one.
season
Yep.
because Derrick Henry had how many rushing yards this year? Like
17.
18, 1900 rushing
Mm,
yards almost. I think he had 1900 plus rushing yards, a ton of rushing touchdowns. Lamar Jackson is like
yeah,
4,000 passing
1900.
yards, 900 rushing yards, the best. Eventually, in the next episode or two, I have a whole Lamar historical stat category, but his
You've been
his
building
numbers
it
off the
up.
charts this year are ridiculous.
Yeah.
His touchdown to interception ratio is the best in like league history,
Yeah.
essentially. For this season. And so I think with those two things, coming together, I think ultimately it's going to be the Ravens. To me, it really just comes down to, is Lamar going to get the yips in this game? Because I don't think Josh Allen necessarily gets the yips. I think he just kind of gets bested by the Chiefs.
Yeah.
And, sometimes Lamar gets the yips. But when you have Derrick Henry that you can say, hey, I'm having a hard time here, I think that helps a lot. So I'm going to pick the Ravens. Obviously, I think it's going to be a close game. Obviously, I think it's going to be a banger. This is the Sunday 3:30 p.m. our time game, and I'm going to be probably emotionally exhausted coming off of that Rams Eagles game that starts at
And
noon right before
in
it.
in whatever fashion.
Yeah, I'm gonna have like a 30-minute cool down. I'm gonna have to like take a cold shower or like
Go
plunge
for
in
a
the
walk.
lake or something.
Yeah.
And like if the Rams win and I get to watch this game like on cloud nine, that's gonna be like probably the single best like viewing experience going from a Rams Eagles to Ravens Bills.
Yeah.
So I think this game's just going to be an absolute banger. Um, and even though the Chiefs are always going to be looming, the reason I say that this is like the Super Bowl for me is they also check like all of the exciting boxes.
Hmm.
And again, the MVP voting is technically over, but all of the narratives are going to lead to this one game, and there's going to be a lot of people that are going to say somebody is or isn't deserving because of this game, and
Hmm.
that's how you also know that these guys are going to come to play.
Yeah.
And I just can't wait. But yeah, I all that being said, I'm going to pick the Ravens here.
Yeah, I'm leaning Ravens too because I mean, okay, my hope is that they've figured out the one thing that why they didn't beat the Chiefs last year. Derrick Henry ran for 26 carries for 186 yards and two touchdowns. The
That's why they
Ravens
lost.
they lost last year because they abandoned the run game and ran the ball like six times last year against the Chiefs in the AFC Championship, or like six times in the second half. That's not happening this time. That's not happening with Derrick Henry. When you've got the bell cow type of running back who
Hmm.
you can give it to 30 times, um, and get you 100, plus yards. So no teams have an answer for Derrick Henry. Um, no teams have an answer for Saquon. That's kind of the reason I'm going Eagles, and I'm leaning that same way with the Ravens here. Is like no team has had an answer, um, and I don't think that that's changing. Um, they can just give it to him 30 times. Lamar Jackson doesn't need to do a million things, so then he doesn't need to, get small in this game or panic, or whatever word you use. I don't remember what word you just used. Um,
I don't even remember either because there are so many
yeah,
adjectives
I mean, yeah,
for
what he's done,
crumbling or getting scared or
folding, yeah.
yeah,
So he's done all that. He has the reputation, but I think when you have a Derrick Henry, obviously your job at quarterback is much easier. So I'm
yeah.
leaning Ravens here because of that. Obviously I like the Ravens overall as a team. Like as a team, I've always been kind of like, yeah, I root for them, and they're not, playing the Seahawks. Kind of, they're one of those
Yeah,
teams for me.
they've kind of low key become my like AFC team in a
Yeah.
weird way.
Yep.
part of it is like it's gonna sound really stupid, but I also like the color purple. Obviously, just
Yeah,
rocks. Like purple's a cool color,
Lamar's
but
awesome.
but like Ravens players look cool in Ravens uniforms, and then you
Yeah,
also just have really cool players on your team, and
yeah,
so it's like it's really hard to not look at a backfield like that and be like, yeah, I think I'm gonna like root for that to
yeah.
keep happening, which is also why I ultimately want them to win. Like I think a Chiefs Ravens AFC Championship rematch.
I mean,
Um,
any one of these would be great.
any one of them is going to be, but like I want that rematch. I want to watch more of Derrick Henry and Lamar than I want to watch like Josh Allen kind of carry that team.
Yeah.
Even though obviously the storylines are regardless are going to go crazy. Really, the only way that the storylines don't go crazy is if the Texans somehow win, which I
Well,
don't.
that would be a crazy. That would be crazy. That would
I
be a
mean,
crazy
that would
storyline.
be that would be, but then like the AFC title game would be like, okay, which Ravens or Bills team is gonna like, stomp the
Um,
turd out of the Texans to go to the
yeah.
Super Bowl?
Yeah.
Um, but I
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just I I'm really, really, really excited for this slate of football games. And that's why, yeah, ultimately I think this divisional round is the new best to me personally, like week of football that we will ever get. Not this week specifically, but just in general.
Yeah.
And so I'm really excited to tuck in, watch these games. It's going to be stressful. Part of me wishes that my team was not in the
That's
playoffs
that's
because
always a thing that I've always kind of enjoyed. My team hasn't been in a couple years, and
Mhm.
like when they are, there's just like yeah, there's just this part of me that's like I have to watch my team, and I'm
it's
gonna pull my hair out because there's now so much to play for. Once you're in, it feels more real. It feels actually somewhat attainable. Like man, if we just win 3 games, we're in the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
You know?
the stress that comes, obviously the payoff is unlike anything, but sometimes that stress is like, I don't want the stress of the Rams Eagles game with a 30-minute cool down to ruin
Hmm.
Ravens Bills. So that's going to
Yeah.
be my own
Well,
like meditation that I have to focus on, but
and the thing is,
this weekend's going to
the thing
bang.
is, what's great is that you and I get to actually have this conversation since our teams have had success recently.
Oh
Unlike
yeah.
Matt and Mike, who
Yeah,
like were like children when
which is
their
so
team won.
crazy because I'll be 30 in March, and in my entire time on this earth, they have not won a Super Bowl,
Yeah,
which is
same,
just
same
which is
here.
just
They're only like
something.
1 year ahead of like or behind the Cowboys. The Cowboys get all the slack for like 30 plus years. They're at like 28,
Hmm.
29 years. So, um,
It's just tough, but I'm sure they're also enjoying the playoffs as well because obviously their team's not in it, so
yeah, they get to just stress
they get
free
a
enjoy
stress
it.
free. Yeah,
Yeah, there's also an element of like with my teams with they when I knew they weren't going to win the Super Bowl, maybe they got in the playoffs. Where then they did lose, I'm like, okay, now I can just enjoy.
yeah. That
I
was
can
kind of
just
me.
enjoy.
That was kind
Yeah.
of me last year when we lost to the Lions, but now that we've made it to the second round, it's like, okay, so should I have real expectations now?
Wait, yeah, yeah. Chat, is this for real?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Chat, is this fake?
yeah,
Is this AI?
yeah. So yeah. I hopefully all of you guys are as excited as we are for this week. It should be awesome. Obviously, if your team is in it, we hope they win, unless it's the Rams, because I don't want them to win. But hopefully you have a great weekend of football. You get to watch these awesome games. Should be awesome. Hopefully next week we'll have Matt, Mike, or both of them back this week. We're glad to be back. Hopefully you're glad we're back, and if not,
Oh yeah.
oh well, that's fine. That's fine. We do
Yeah.
this for us. We
You
don't do
don't
this for you.
yeah, you don't have to listen. It's
Yeah, you
fine.
don't have to, but if you do, great. So if you want to, feel free to subscribe to our channel. It's been fun doing this in this format, and we got a few more weeks of it. So enjoy football, and we'll see you next week.